All right, all right. Thank you very much. We have a lot to talk about and not a lot of time. So in some cases, I'll jump through it and you'll need to assume that it's true. You won't see it in the demo, but I'll try to make it as interactive as possible when time allows. Um, First of all, like a quick introduction from my side. I'm Dro from Global Dots. We work with mostly either cloud native or organizations who are in some part of the digital transformation journey. Um, we do many things for them, including DevOps, web delivery, um, CDNs, cost optimization, and of course, cloud security. We're going to talk today about basically why should we go beyond single sign-on, because most of you probably use some sort of single sign-on. What we need to expect from a modern identity management solution. It's going to be a bit vendor agnostic. And the important part, how to automate all of the boring stuff around the employee lifecycle, access lifecycle, improve productivity, security, compliance, with, in this case, Okta workflows, but with basically with automation. Um, so let's start. Basically, not all single sign-on solutions were born equal. Yes, there are standards. Some of them are SAML, just-in-time provisioning, SAML roles, federation, OAuth, Scheme. You probably heard any of that, like single sign-on buzzword bingo, but they're not the same. Most of them usually take care only on the authentication part. So the user needs to already have an account somewhere, but that his password is stored somewhere else in a simple place, and he signs on once a day or once whatever we decide. We challenge him for MFA, and from there he takes it from there. But in reality, what we also want, especially when we're in a high growth environment, we want our users and employees to get basically the account that they need in that environment. We want the movers, once you move a position, to get your access removed and added to the new things that you want. And it's not only getting a set of permissions, it's also knowing how to use them. For example, if an employee knows, a new employee joins a company and you use, for example, Notion for project management, he needs to know and he needs to get an invite and he needs to not only have an account there. Employees are a bit more than a set of permission profile. And of course, permission sprawl is a real thing. And when we work in a high growth or high change or any engineering led environment, we want our employees and colleagues to get the best day one or even day zero. You'll see it in the demo experience. They need to join us and we need to be able to hire them at scale to get them what they need and to avoid lengthy onboarding activities that can sometimes take, and I've seen this, can sometimes take weeks until a new employee understands what is doing what, how to access it, do I have the right permissions, and with help desk call saying, hey, I need access like this guy and stuff like that. Basically, once we do that, we get higher velocity. We avoid permission sprawl, and it's a real thing, especially with more tenured engineers. And we want to reduce our attack landscape and save money, especially on SaaS licenses and resources. So in a modern IDM solution, what we should expect from a modern IDM solution, and that is even before we talk about all of the automations that are, let's say, more complex. We want our HR group to control the joiners, leavers, and movers in our environment. We work with companies that can grow their workforce like 3x in 1 year. It doesn't matter what the number is. Going from 20 to 60 or from 2,000 to 6,000 is as complex as it is because you have the lower number of IT engineers, and so on. So we want HR to control the flow of employees. We want to minimize touch points with the IT department or DevOps department to a minimum. And we want our security team to be able to monitor, audit, enforce, and of course, have the flexibility to understand what is happening and to monitor everything. But we also want our end user to get a better user experience. We want him to only do whatever we need him to do and not bother him with millions of sign-ins and millions of profiles that are different. So what we can expect is to have, of course, HR controlling the user flow. We want our users to have very flexible user profiles. We want the ability to add a field, remove a field, get it from HR for all users, understand it, sync it, build dynamic groups on top of it, so that the user, let's say if I'm now a team lead, I need access to X, Y, and Z, and I will be automatically moved to that group based on my profile, and I can take it from there and continue my journey. And we want our modern IDM solution to provision and deprovision 100% of the user's accounts. No support tickets, nothing. So this is what we can expect from a modern IDM solution. And of course, it needs to be, it needs to save time. So SSO usually comes in to bring us compliance and ease of use. But in the end, once we implement the modern solution, we save a lot of time in opening, resolving tickets, communications between IT, HR, security, end users in a way that actually saves time, money, and improves the user experience at the end. So I ran through that part just to get to this part. Basically, when we say I want to automate everything, it's not just adding and removing user accounts. There's a lot more to that. So I'm going to demo an add-on for Okta called Okta Workflows, because I think it's a very good fit, and I've seen it in action, actually saving time and money. So it's a no-code if this then that add-on. Right? It has built-in connectors to, let's say, modern stacks, and of course we can always use different generic API connectors to run lambdas behind the scenes and to do more complex stuff if it's not available. So we have a generic API connector that can both initiate and act and receive webhooks. We can handle complex logic with many different data types. And we are doing this all in an event-driven way with persistence when needed. So we can save data between those flows. It's not like a Lambda that disappears. And we can basically play with that and move forward with that. So how do they look like? You'll see here like a high-level example of how they work, and then I'll drill down a bit more in the demo part. But basically, every flow has a trigger, and that trigger will initiate a set of actions. So in this case, what you see on your screen here is a scheduled flow, because we're running an inactivity report. We want to see a list of all users that were inactive for the last month, and we want to take care of them. And so we have two flows. We have one here that is more around running that flow, running it X time, listing users with a filter, and then runs a for loop that runs another flow, the lower one, the longer one. And I think it's a very good example of the complexity level that we can get to, because in the end, running an inactivity report is fairly easy, but not all users are born the same. We have service accounts, we have contractors, we have C-level executives that I don't want to lock them. And they can be, and they tend to be, by the way, inactive, especially in engineering-led organizations. Not because they're not working, but because they're doing other things. And we want to make sure that every one of those groups are treated in the way that they should be treated. So, for example, in the screen here, you can see that we get the initiator here is the child flow, which is the loop from above. We read each user, we see the groups that they are in, and we are looking for a particular set of groups, and then we tag them. We compare the time, okay, when were they last active? What action should I take? And if they were inactive and they are, for example, here a contractor, if they're a contractor, then it's true. And we are going to compose a message and send a message to the manager of that contractor. So for every contractor, we have someone who's responsible for that person. So we want to send him a message and say, hey, this guy is inactive. Should we deactivate it? Should we suspend it? What's the status? And if it's just a full-time employee that was inactive for a month, then yeah, we will send a message to the IT channel, and we will also, it's not visible here, but we will also suspend the user, giving him access, and he can unsuspend himself if we want to, but we want to make sure that this guy is still with us, he's not lost. And of course, we add it to a table that we have somewhere else. So this is like in high level, relatively easy drag and drop workflow that you can create, and you will see that in 1 minute. Yeah, so let me move to the demo. So if you're not familiar with Okta, it looks like this. Every individual has a profile. That profile can have, I added a parameter here for Europe clouds. And in that place, I can also manage dynamic groups. I'm just taking note of time. And I have my group rules. And I say, okay, if the EU cloud equals 1, then I will assign that user to Europe clouds. So you can see that this group is currently empty. But if I go back to my profile, and I change this one to 1, then you can see that I'm here and I manage by rules. So my profile is being controlled. Imagine an HR system that controls the groups. Those groups are later assigned to applications with permission profiles. So this is like in 1 minute, the whole process of automating the provisioning and access. But the more interesting part lives here in our automation consoles. So I have my lab here. You can see that we have different connections to different IT services that we use here in Global Dots. This is my account. And in this, let me give you some examples and of cool things that we did to our customers. Let's start with this one. So what we wanted to achieve here is to say, okay, run this every day. And every day I want you to check in my incoming users table, all of the new employees. I want you to find all of the ones that the start date is 7 days from now or less, and I haven't notified them yet. And then for each of them, I will run another flow for each user that starts in the next 7 days that I haven't sent a notification to. I want to run this flow. I'll open it, and this is the interesting stuff. Say, okay, we got from that flow the username and the row ID in that table. I take this username, I drag it here to Okta, Yeah, okay. And I read that user. When I read that user, I ask Okta, hey, these are the profile attributes that I want to look at. When I take these attributes, I then run an if-else function, and that function will say, hey, if he is in the engineering group, then I want the user to select his MacBook, and this is like the parsed HTML of what you see there. Hey, welcome to Europe Cloud. To expedite your onboarding process, select your computer. Once they click on that, and of course, for different departments, we have different selections. Some of them we have no selections, some we do have. For each of those, once the user clicks it, we basically get a notification saying, hey, once he clicks it, we update it and say, okay, we sent a notification. And then the next flow starts. And basically, the links that you saw on the other tab are webhooks that will turn on this API endpoint that will take the username, make sure if he's already there and he haven't already selected, because we don't want to have like duplications. We read that user and we basically create a Zendesk ticket in this case saying, hey, this user selected this and he's on our Israeli site or German site or wherever he is. That's why we read the user. We update that he selected a computer already. So if he clicks again, he will be gone here. We update it and we return, hey, thanks, we got your selection and some nice HTML stuff just to get a nice overview. And that's basically it. Now, just to modify a little bit how we change things and how we do that, let's say, for example, instead of getting the site here, I want to get something else. So I can remove this and I can select when I want to add an action, I can select if it's something that needs to run in an app, for example, G Suite or in Okta or in Zoom or Zendesk or whatever, or it's an action that I need to run on the data itself. So I need to run a loop, I need to move data types, I need to play with those data types, I need to cut them. So we have actions and we have connections. In this case, let's say I want to get something from Okta. I get a list of actions. What do I want to do? I want to read that user. And when I read that user, let's go to our production environment, because nothing is better than a live demo in the production environment. Okta says, hey, okay, this is what you can get from this API call. What do you need? You can take everything, that will work. But what I really want is I want the Europe Clouds attribute that I added. And then, okay, let's say that the username, basically this is the username. So who should it run for? I just drag it here. I see the connections. I will get the Europe Cloud property. And then instead of sending the site, I can send, oops, sorry about that. I can send, is this the best conference or what? And again, and I can obviously take that output, and that output is already here. It will be created in my ticket and continue from there. Now, let's say I don't really want to create that ticket and I want to have other things. Let me just make sure that I'm on time. So, yeah. So let's say that I now want to send a Slack message to someone about it. So I can add Slack. I can say, okay, let's send a message directly to the user. And we will go with user ID. To get that Slack user ID, it's a different profile. I need to add another action. So see just how easy it is to play with it. I just need to read that user, tell them, hey, I'm going to give you an email. You are going to give me back. So my username is here. You will give me his user ID. I will use that user ID and I will send him a message. Think about it. You can also do that by saying, hey, grab the manager from the profile of that user. When I read that user, send a message to him or get something from him. And the text is the same text. And I will need a third timestamp. And that is basically as easy as that. What you saw here is basically a full flow that's working, it will function. I can test either the flow itself, or I can say, hey, you know what? I want to just check this one and see if it works. So it asks for user ID. Let's go with globaldocs.com. That's my email. And all right, I'm active. And this is my value. I can do it for another user, just to see it's not always the same case. Let's take a lad, empty, so it will not continue. Let me monitor. All right, so I see some questions in the chat, like what is the system? The system is Okta. It's an identity manager. And I see that also someone added that it's kind of like Auth0. Then yes, Auth0 is more aimed at customer identity management. It's, by the way, the same company. Okta owns Auth0. Okta is used both for customer identity management, but also for workforce. And what you're seeing here is the workforce part. I also see a question about, is this natively built in? It is built in, but it is a paid add-on. So it's not for on every license, but yes, absolutely. And I can share just quickly another use case that we worked on. In a highly regulated environment, a highly regulated customer, they had to keep logs for audit logs for all creations and new users and who approved them. And so we had that HR system. That HR system was imported to Okta. We added those users as staged users. We used this to say, okay, if a user was created by HR, send a Slack message to the HR team, the HR channel, give them all of the details that we got. And they need to go and enter the slash command in Slack saying, hey, slash approve user grow at globaldocs.com. They have like a copy paste or a button, doesn't matter, which will fire another workflow that will say, okay, this user was approved by HR. Now I need the IT department to approve it. They look at it, they say, okay, it makes sense. I approve this user, and only then that user is getting created. Of course, they're getting the emails, the welcome emails, custom welcome emails with Google Docs based on their department, so they'll know what tools they need to use. We can invite and so on. So I see we are running out of time, and I don't want to take time from the next presenter. I know that I ran through a lot of things that will usually take me more than the 25 minutes that we had here. If it's something that you want to see more, then first of all, my email is here in the chat. And I also see two questions. I'll try to answer them, and then they'll cut me off. So absolutely. So you can control who is able to access GitHub or any other tool based on Okta, but it's mostly based on identity and not access. So don't think of it as a VPN because the SaaS is outside, it's on the internet. Think of it as something that controls the access, which is the true source of truth of who this user is. So thank you very much, everyone. It's been great fun. I hope it was not too fast. And I know that it sometimes can be a relatively boring topic, permissions, but when you do it at scale, it's cool. I promise you.